Bonjour tout le monde. Comme Jean-Philippe vient de m'introduire, je suis Dinesh SURROOP de l'Université de Maurice. Malheureusement, je vais faire les présentations en anglais. Donc, si vous avez des questions, s'il y a quelque chose qui n'est pas clair, vous pouvez me poser des questions. Donc, je vais essayer de clarifier aussi possible. Right. So, thank you very much for inviting me here. It is indeed a great pleasure to be among you at this seminar. Thank you very much, Jean-Philippe. So, as Jean-Philippe said, I am Dinesh SURROOP from the University of Mauritius, and I'm going to present the energy system and access in small island developing states, more precisely a case study of Mauritius. My presentation is going to consist of the following, right? So without delaying any further, let's move on to the introduction. Right, as you know, there is an increase in the population growth. In fact, if you look, the population in 2006, it was 6.5 million. And this is being increased by a rate of 1% annually. And the same is expected to increase up to 8.2 billions in 2030, right? So the population is going to increase. At the same time, we have an increase in the GDP, the gross domestic product. So the increase is on average 3.3% for the period of 2006 and 2030. And if we combine the increase in population, the population growth, with the increase in GDP, obviously there is going to be an increase in the energy requirements, in the energy demand. So there is going to be more people, the requirements is going to increase, we need to provide more energy. And it has been forecasted that if you look at this chart, irrespective the different sources of energy, right, the trend has been increased up to 2015. And the same is expected to increase up to 2030. This means that the demand is going to increase, the supply must be increased in order to have energy access to everyone. I'm going to focus on the small island developing states because this region is quite unique, right? In the sense that they are very remote, they are isolated, they are not connected to mainland. So first of all, perhaps you know what is small island developing state, but I will just focus on the main region of the small island developing states. Basically, small island developing state, we have three distinct regions: the Caribbean, right, next to USA, the Pacific on the other side of Australia, and what we have in the middle, the African and Mediterranean seas, that is in this region where we are currently. There is a list of the official list of small island developing states is 37, right? But we have another list of 52 islands, which include overseas territories, for example, like Réunion. So we have small island developing states, there are 37 seats, but also we have overseas island territories. So let's look at the Caribbean. What is the energy mix in the Caribbean region? So if you look at this chart, right, you can see the different islands, right, with different. So I will just take you through what the different shading means. If you look at this circle, this represents the electrification rate. That is the percentage of people having access to electricity in each island. So this is the percentage of electricity. And if you look at this pie chart, right, the blue color represents the dependence on fossil fuel. That is the contribution of fossil fuels in the electricity mix. And the other color represents the renewable energy, right? So we are going to look at these data without spending too much time, of course. So if you look in this region, countries like Cuba, Bahamas, St. Lucia, they have 100% access to electricity. That is, all the people on the island have access to electricity, right? And most of the islands, they have more than 90% of the population have access to electricity, except Haiti, where they had the earthquake incident in 2010, where they have only 38% of the population have access to electricity. And then we have St. Vincent and Grenada, which has 76% of the population that has access to electricity. Otherwise, all the different islands in the Caribbean region, 90% and above of the people have access to electricity. Now, if we look at the energy mix, most of the islands, right, are absolutely depending on fossil fuels. There are very few that has some renewable energy, like you can see Dominican Republic, St. Vincent, Haiti, Jamaica. So very few amount of renewable energy, less than 25%, right, in most of them, right? So its energy mix basically is highly dependent on fossil fuels. So this is the situation in the Caribbean island, right? Most of them are doing fine, except Haiti and St. Vincent and Grenada. Otherwise, most of them have a very good access to electricity. Let's move on to the other side of the globe, on the Pacific. Pacific also, it's a region where they have many islands, isolated, but I'm going to focus on the very few, which is similar to what are missing here. So if you look at some of the island here, you can see, again, the energy access in the island of Nauru is 100%. All the people have access. In Fiji, it is 89%. Otherwise, in Kiribati, it is 63%. Otherwise, in all the different islands, like Vanuatu, it is 70%. Solomon Island, 14%. And surprisingly, PNG, Papua New Guinea, a country, an island where they have gas, there is only 10% of the population that has access to electricity, right? So that's quite surprising. If you look at the energy mix, Fiji is more than 50% on renewable energy, right? In fact, 60% of the electricity is produced from renewable energy. PNG is doing fine in terms of renewable energy. Otherwise, all the different energy mix are highly dependent on fossil fuels. This is typical for most of the islands. So we have looked at the Caribbean, we have looked at the Pacific region, right? Let's move on to the African region, right? So this is the African region, African and Mediterranean. So in this region, we have this island, but also we have island like Singapore, right? Which is not in this chart. So this is a region where you are very much familiar, the southwest of the Indian Ocean, right? As I said, Réunion is missing here because Réunion is an overseas territories and like small island developing states, right? So if you look at this region, you have Mauritius that has 100% access of electricity. Seychelles is doing fine, 97% access of electricity. Madagascar, they have some issue, only 15% of the population have access to electricity. Although Madagascar is one of those islands in the Indian Ocean that is resourceful in terms of energy. Comoros, only 45% of the population have access. And then this is an interesting region, right? Completely different from here, completely remote. In fact, although we are in the same region in Africa, but we are really connected to ourselves, right? So Cape Verde, they are doing fine, 94% of electricity, and Samoa and Tome Principe, which is around 60% of access to electricity. If you look at the energy mix, Seychelles is highly dependent on fossil fuels, very few amounts of wind energy. In Mauritius, it is also highly dependent on fossil fuels. In fact, 23% of the energy comes from renewable energy. Right? Madagascar, they have a good renewable energy, something like less than 25%. Comoros, highly depending on fossil fuels. It's the same thing for Samoa Tome and Cape Verde, although Cape Verde is doing much better in that region in terms of share of renewable energy in the energy mix. Right? So these are the three regions of small island developing states, and you can see that most of the islands, they are highly, highly dependent on fossil fuels. Wherever I go to present about SIDS, there is a nice quote that I need to copy, right? I like to copy. So there is a nice quote by Dr. Yum Kela, right, the CEO of Sustainable Energy for All. He stated that while the small island developing states and the least developing countries contribute the least to global greenhouse gas emission, it is often they who pay the highest price of the impact of climate change. Which means that as a small island, right, our contribution, our release of GHG is very, very, very small, right, compared to big countries like China, India, USA, right? But still, we are the one who are bearing the consequence. We are the one who are facing all the issues. You have recently seen the Maria and Irma hurricanes in the Caribbean that has devastated Puerto Rico. Last year, we had similar hurricane in the Pacific that has devastated Fiji Island, right? So basically, all these extreme weather conditions are coming from the emission of greenhouse gases. These islands are contributing very low amount of GHG, but still, we are the one who are facing, right? Many SIDS, it spends large, as you have seen in the previous chart, the three different regions, the small island developing states are highly dependent on fossil fuels. And accordingly, these cities spend most of their national budgets, right, their allocated funds, on importing costly fossil fuels, simply because it is remote, so it has to be imported. The cost of the freight add on the expenses. And you will be surprised to see that the same amount is spent in addressing the impact of climate change, either through mitigation or through adaptation, right? So the same amount is being spent, right, to solve the problem that has not been really created by the small island, right? So this is basically the situation of small island developing state generally and other small island overseas territories as well. So everyone is facing the same thing. Right, let's now move to, in the Mauritian context, I think most of you know where is Mauritius. I think some of you have been to Mauritius. So this is few pictures of Mauritius, right? Right, Mauritius is an island next to Réunion, 50 minutes of flying time, right? So basically it is 800 on the eastern side of Madagascar. We have a population of 1.3 million. We have a total surface area, including our Rodrigues Island, of 2,040 kilometers square. And we have a GDP growth of 3.5%, which is not bad. So if we look at the total primary energy requirement, right? So here I'm talking about the primary energy requirements, which include the transportation energy as well. So if you look here, you can see that petroleum is the dominating one, that is fossil fuels, oil, kerosene, diesel. And the distribution is as follows. So gasoline represents 10%, diesel 14%. We have aviation fuel for airplane, 8.5%, fuel oil, 17%, and the rest is kerosene, 0.1%. Otherwise, coal is another big share of our primary energy requirement, which represents 41%, and renewable energy only 14% on the primary energy requirement. I'm not talking about the electricity mix, right? It's the primary energy requirement. So you can see that we are highly depending on fossil fuels, coal and oil. Our electricity basically is supplied by the national utility company, right? The Central Electricity Board, and they are responsible for transmission and distribution of the electricity to all the people on the island. They are the one who is responsible for the grid connection, for the transmission, for the distribution. Also, they also produce some of the electricity. This is the electricity production. So electricity is produced, CB, Central Electricity Board, they are responsible for transmission and distribution, but they also produce electricity. So they have 6 thermal power plants running on heavy fuel oil or diesel, 9 hydropower plants, and 2 wind farms, which is located in the Rodrigues Island. We have 5 thermal power plants, right, that operate both on coal, some only on coal, some only on bagasse, but most of them operate both on coal and bagasse. 1 landfill gas to energy plant in the landfills that we have, centre d'enfouissement. 2 recently solar farm and 1 wind farm that has recently been commissioned on the island. So if you look at this chart, so these are the location of the different power plants on the island, right? So you can see this is a power plant that runs on coal and bagasse. During the crop season, we burn bagasse. During off-crop season, we burn coal in the same installation, right? So it has an installed capacity of 71 megawatt. And these 2 power plants now has become one, right? They have merged. So they also burn coal and bagasse during the crop season. This is another power plant that burns coal and bagasse. So these 3 companies, they burn both coal and bagasse. So bagasse basically is burned during crop season. This power plant, it started in operation in 2007. And this is one of the most efficient power plants, not only in Mauritius, but in the region, in the southern sub-Saharan African region. This is a power plant that burns only on coal, right, around the year. We have another power plant here which is missing, but you will see in the next map. So this is a new solar farm, 15 megawatt. We have a 2 new one that has been installed. And these are the installation of the Central Electricity Board. So here you have a complete picture. So this is one of the sugar factories that burns only on bagasse. That is, they produce electricity only during the crop season. Once there is no bagasse, the power plant is shut down. And all these are the hydropower. So we have one landfill gas to energy plant, right? And recently, we have just commissioned a 10 megawatt power plant of wind, which is located in the north of the island somewhere here, right? So this is the geographical location of the power plants in Mauritius. In Rodrigues, which belong to Mauritius as well, so there we have two power plants that runs on heavy fuel oil and diesel, and two power plants runs on wind. And all the power plant belongs to the Central Electricity Board, right? In this graph, only the power plant of hydro and oil that belongs to the Central Electricity Board. Otherwise, all the other power plants, they are independent power producers supplied by private sector on, of course, an agreed rate. So, as I was saying, the energy mix in Mauritius is a bit different. I don't know if you can see it clearly at the back. I'll just take you through it. So this is diesel and heavy fuel oil, which represent around 37% of the energy mix. This is coal, which represent around 40% of the energy mix. So you can see the energy mix is highly dominated by fossil fuel. And here it is renewable energy, which is something like 23% of the electricity mix. So you can see bagasse is dominating 17%. We have hydro 4.1%. Landfill gas and wind is slightly less than 1%. And photovoltaic is 0.9%. It is expected that the share of solar and wind is going to increase in the very near future. So hopefully they can cross the bar of 1%. So this is our long-term energy strategy. So we have a strategy how to increase the share of renewable energy. Although we have a strategy, it is not necessary that we always respect those targets, but at least we have a strategy. So in 2015, we were supposed to reach 24%. Currently, we are only at 23%. So we have not really reached the strategy, the target, by 1%. So this was done in 2007, and now currently there is another strategy is being developed to increase the target up to 2035, where we are going to review those targets. And although it is still at the discussion stage, but it seems that we are going to increase this share up to 37 to 40% by 2035, right? So this is our strategy basically. Some of them are going to be reviewed, some of them are going to be increased. Some of them are going to be simply eliminated, like geothermal, right? So we are going to have a new one in the very near future. Right. In Mauritius, we have a very good strategy, but how to reach there? We have target, but the implementation plan in most of the cases for most of the countries are missing. So in Mauritius, we have taken some of the measures in order to increase the share of renewable energy. During the crop season, you know, when the sugarcane are harvested, all the sugarcane goes to the milling, to the sugar factory, and what is left on the field is the cane tops and the leaves, right? Is left on the field, right? So currently, all these are being left in the field. So last year, in our budget, the government has taken decision to also start burning the cane tops and leaves in the power plant. That is to complement the amount of bagasse that we have. Obviously, we cannot take all the cane tops and leaves from the sugarcane field because they have their other importance. So currently, one of the power plant has started it, and we are collecting 15%, 15% of the cane tops and leaves that is left on the field for power generation. So this is going to increase the share of renewable energy slightly. As you know, the price of sugar is going down, right? Basically, all the sugar industry are making loss, right? Basically, it is only the insurance company who are saving the sugar industry. So in Mauritius, we have changed the sugar industry. We have changed from sugar industry, which was traditionally sugar producing, from sugar industry now to cane industry. That is, we are not only focusing on sugar, we are also focusing on power generation, and we are also focusing on ethanol production, right? So this is where basically the real business is. This is where we are making profit, although the sugar is still there. And since the sugar price has gone down, many of the farmers has abandoned their land. They don't want to spend their time in the high-intensive labor business, right? So most of the land are abandoned, right? So there is nothing on the land. People have land, but nothing is being grown. So then we are looking for new variety biomass that is non-food biomass, like arundinonax or like elephant grass that can be planted, harvested, and used directly for combustion, right? That is to supplement bagasse. We have not yet started. We are still at research stage. There are a few crops that we have tested that are working pretty well in terms of their energy content, in terms of emission. We have not yet done any test case on the power plant, but hopefully we are going to start it very soon. Solar energy, right? Solar energy and wind energy, they are two intermittent power, and if you look at it from the utility company perspective, they don't like it because they are intermittent, and this is a problem for them because they need to ensure that people are getting electricity around the clock, right? So whereas at night you don't have solar energy. So this is a problem for them, and they are very resistant to it. But currently we have started to install few installation on solar energy. We had 15 megawatt that is on. We have 2 times 2 megawatt that is also on, and recently I think in the very, I think last month or so, there has been award of additional solar power plant by the Central Electricity Board. So it is going to start picking up, and hopefully this is going to increase. Wind power, we had only wind power in Rodrigues Island, and we had recently commissioned one installation of 10 megawatt in the country, and which is doing pretty well. So hopefully we can have some more few farms. Obviously, renewable energy is an objective for everyone in order to address all the different climate change issues. But there are many barriers. There are many hurdles. There are many lobbies not to go for renewable energy, right? So few of the barriers are lack of regulatory frameworks. If you look at in the sub-Saharan African region and also in many of the seats, what is missing basically, there is no regulatory framework, right? They don't have any plan how to increase the share of renewable energy. In some cases, in big meetings, they come with some targets, 100% of renewable energy. Some nice target, which is very fascinating and very good to hear, right? But what is missing is an implementation plan, right? They have target, but they don't know how to increase it, how to reach that target. So this is one of the big barriers. Lack of information. We have intermittent power from solar and wind. One of the biggest barrier in the small island developing state region is that lack of capacity, right? How to manage the grid, how to have a smarter grid, right? So in the absence of those capacity, we say that, okay, this is not going to work, and we don't adventure in it, right? So this is one of the biggest problem, lack of information. A storage system. If we have intermittent power, we need to have a storage system in order to ensure that we have continuous supply of electricity. So this is another issue as well. Lack of incentive, subsidy on renewable energy technologies, right? We started on the feed-in tariff, something like, we started working on it 10 years ago, and when it has just started, the feed-in tariff, the price that we were getting by selling the electricity on the grid was great. It was 4 to 5 times higher the cost of electricity, right? So that was a very good incentive. But now, when people are starting investing on it, someone has to pay those investments, those costs, and someone is going to make loss because we are paying at a higher price, right? So subsidy, although it is an incentive, but this is not a sustainable approach, right? I just give you one example, just completely different from the energy sector. Currently, we are working on a project on industrial symbiosis. That is how to convert the waste from industry into a resource for another company to produce another product, right? That is to convert the waste into a raw materials. And we have one of the challenge currently about the waste glass from beverages companies. We have lots of waste glass. We have only 2 recycling plants in Mauritius that has a very small capacity. And these glass can be crushed to use as filter for swimming pool water treatment, right? So it can be used to filter the swimming pool water treatment. And now many people are just purchasing those grounded glass from China, which is much cheaper. So we need these glasses, right, grounded glass, which is available in Mauritius, but it is much more cheaper in China. So the question is, should we give those local companies subsidy? If we give it, so someone has to pay it. Does government has enough money to pay it? So this is one challenge. Or should we put tax on what is coming in, right? So there are two issues. Either we give subsidy or we put tax. From my personal perspective, and many people disagree with me, I think that putting a tax is much better. So no one bear the cost of the subsidy, right? So if you are bringing in new material, you pay tax on it, right? But this is a very controversial discussion, right? Subsidy versus tax, right? So of course, subsidy on renewable energy technologies, this is one way out. Not necessarily sustainable, but at least to start the process. Higher selling price of electricity, as I said initially, when we started to connect to the grid, we had a very good price. So those people who invested initially, they had very, very good price, very low payback periods. They recovered their investment in a very short time. And now we have the net metering. That is, you use what you are producing, right? And then you offset it when you're using during night. So this is quite common everywhere. I just want to touch upon energy efficiency because this is also something very important. We are talking about renewable energy, but renewable energy is not the ultimate solution, right? Because when we are producing electricity in the transmission itself, there are lots of losses, right? Similarly, in industries, in manufacturing industries, when we are burning heavy fuel oil to produce steam, right? In the conversion itself, there are lots of losses, right? Either loss through the flue gas, loss through the blowdown, but there are several losses in terms of heat. So with increasing the energy demand, energy efficiency can complement basically renewable energy, right? In fact, we are working on another project where we are focusing on the total energy requirement, and we put energy efficiency as a virtual power plant, right? If we manage to make savings through energy efficiency, basically this means that we don't need that amount to be produced. So it is a virtual power plant. By having a proper energy efficiency program or strategy, energy losses is greatly reduced, whereby more output can be recovered. That is, if we reduce those losses, this means that with the same amount of raw mats, we can we can recover higher amount of energy. That is, just decreasing those losses. This means that no additional resources will be needed to meet the energy demand. We have in Mauritius set up the Energy Efficiency Management Office, right, which look basically after developing and implementing strategies, programs, and action plans for energy efficient use, right? So basically their objective is to look at all the different energy measures, starting from energy auditing and implementation. Some of the energy efficiency schemes or projects that we had in the past. So we had the Enterprise Mauritius, which is an entity that regroups all the manufacturing industries. So they have funded some energy audit projects in manufacturing industries where we conduct an energy audit and provide recommendation how to reduce those wastage. We have the X-Shell, which is now Vivo Energy. They have a very good customer service where they fund energy audit for industries that are purchasing oil from them. So they fund the energy audit assessment, and then it is up to the client to implement those recommendations on it. A few years back, we had the exchange of incandescent light for CFL. Now we have LED, more efficient one, right? So this one is a scheme that works. We had several energy saving awareness. We had a scheme on the solar water heater grant in Mauritius. Many people were using either electricity or LPG, liquefied petroleum gas, right, to produce hot water. So the government came with a scheme where they were giving a grant of 50%, roughly 250 euro, to the people to buy solar water heater. Now, given that there is many people applying for this grant, it has reduced. So now we have only 25% of the grant that is the cost of the solar water heater. So this worked perfectly, right? So many people installed solar water heater, and we had a reduction in the use of liquefied petroleum gas for the production of hot water. Power factor correction, this is mainly from the electricity supply. In many of the industries, there is many losses, so we can improve those losses by power factor correction, and use of standard and labeling for appliance, electrical appliance like refrigerator, which is on now. Energy efficiency buildings, this is another avenue where we can make some saving, right? So greening of buildings is a necessity to drive energy consumption down in Mauritius and other island developing states as well. We had a new Building Control Act which was promulgated in 2012 to promote the utilization of energy efficiency technologies. And following this act, we had a legislation on the building code for energy efficiency for promoting green buildings in Mauritius. This is the picture of one of the most efficient building, the head office of one of the biggest bank, which has natural lighting, natural ventilation, and they have installed a PV system in the premises, right? So it is a very efficient building. And therefore, to conclude, I can say that Mauritius is developing slowly, but surely, right? The journey is very long, but we are striving towards the objective to reach the goal. So much improvement and progress still need to be done, right? Lots of work still need to be done. The challenges are huge ahead, but we need to overcome it. And despite several barriers, we are very well confident that the share of renewable energy is going to increase in the very near future. Thank you very much for your attention. So if you have any question, I'll be glad to take it.